The ocean screamed Adana's name. Not in her dreams this time, she'd heard it there since she was 5 years old, but here, now, in the waking world. Her 20th birthday had arrived with the dawn, and with it came a voice that sounded like 1,000 waves singing in harmony, calling her home to a place she'd never been. Adana, daughter, come. She stood at her bedroom window in her father's clifftop compound, watching something impossible unfold across the waters of the Atlantic. The ocean was rising. Not in natural tides or storm surges, but deliberately, reaching upward like a living thing with intention and purpose. Waves climbed higher and higher, defying gravity, stretching toward the village of Ikoro perched on the cliffs above. Get away from that window! Her father, Chief Obi, burst into her room, his eyes wild with a fear she'd never seen before. His hand shook as he grabbed her shoulders, pulling her back. It started. God help us, it started. Papa, what's happening? Why is the ocean? Lock every door. Close every window. Chief Obi shouted to the servant scrambling through the compound. His fingers fumbled as he painted strange symbols on her doorframe with red clay, symbols she recognized from old stories told by village elders. Protection marks. Binding spells. Papa, you're scaring me. He turned to her, and for the first time in her life, Adana saw tears streaming down her father's weathered face. I'm so sorry, my daughter. I'm so sorry for what I've done. Through the window, despite her father's panic, Adana couldn't look away from the ocean. The impossible wave had formed into something even more impossible, the waterspout that touched the sky, and standing within it, visible even from this distance, was a woman. She was the most beautiful thing Adana had ever seen. Skin like polished mahogany, hair flowing with the current as if she were underwater, and covering her lower body, scales. Brilliant scales that caught the morning sun and reflected every color Adana had ever known and some she hadn't. The woman's eyes found hers across the distance, and Adana felt something crack open in her chest. Recognition. Longing. An ache so profound it brought her to her knees. Mama, she whispered, though she'd never known her mother, had been told her entire life that her mother died bringing her into this world. That's not your mama, Chief Obi said, his voice breaking. That's Mummy Water. The water spirit. The goddess of the ocean. He knelt beside her, taking her hands in his. And she's not here to visit, Adana. She's here to collect what I promised her 20 years ago. What did you promise her? Chief Obi looked at his daughter, his beautiful, brilliant daughter who could hold her breath underwater longer than any human should, who always knew where the fish would run, whose tears tasted of the sea itself, and confessed the terrible truth. You. 3 days earlier, Adana's life had been perfect. She woke before dawn, as she always did, to help prepare the fishing fleet. The village of Ikoro was famous across the coastal region for its abundant catches, and much of that success came from Adana's mysterious ability to read the potion. She knew where the fish would run before the fishermen cast their nets. She could predict storms with accuracy that baffled the elders. The ocean spoke to her in ways it spoke to no one else. You're like a daughter of the sea itself, her best friend Kayoma often joked, not knowing how close to the truth she was. That particular morning, Emeka had been waiting for her on the beach. Tall and strong, with hands skilled at both fishing and carving the beautiful wooden sculptures he made in his spare time, Emeka had loved Adana since they were children. At 22, he'd finally gathered the courage to ask Chief Obi for permission to court her properly. Your father said yes, Emeka told her, his smile brighter than the sunrise. After your birthday celebration, we can begin the marriage negotiations. Adana's heart should have soared. Emeka was everything she should want, kind, handsome, hardworking, devoted. He represented a future of stability, of belonging to Ikoro forever, of the normal life she'd always claimed to desire. So why did she feel a strange pull of sadness instead of joy? That's wonderful, she said, forcing enthusiasm into her voice. She let him pull her into an embrace, but her eyes drifted to the ocean. Always the ocean. That afternoon, she'd helped her father in his study, the room where he managed the village's fishing operations and trade agreements. Chief Obi had built their family from nothing into the most prosperous household in 3 villages. He was respected, even feared by some, for his business acumen and wealth. But Adana had noticed something lately. Her father had begun staring at her with an expression that looked like grief. He'd started asking strange questions. "Are you happy here, daughter? Do you ever dream of other places?" And he'd stopped going near the ocean entirely, which was odd for a man who'd built his fortune on fishing. "Papa, is something wrong?" she'd asked that day. He'd looked at her with those grief-stricken eyes and almost spoken. His mouth opened, words forming, confession trembling on his lips. Then he'd closed it again and simply said, "Nothing, my pearl. Nothing at all." But it wasn't nothing. That evening, as Adana walked along the beach with Kyoma, planning her birthday celebration, she'd found something that changed everything. Half buried in the sand was a small wooden box, carved with symbols that seemed to glow in the fading light. Inside was a letter in her father's handwriting, dated 20 years ago. It was a contract. A pact written in blood. And it promised her life to a water spirit named Mummy Water. Adana confronted her father that night, the blood-stained contract trembling in her hands. "Explain this. Now." Chief Obi's face crumbled. For a moment, he looked like he might deny it, might claim the document was a forgery or a joke. Instead, he collapsed into his chair and began to speak, his voice hollow with 20 years of carried guilt. "I was nothing when I met her. Worse than nothing, I was a failure drowning in debt. My fishing boat had sunk in a storm. I owed money to dangerous men who were threatening to kill me. I had no family, no prospects, no hope." His hands shook as he poured palm wine with trembling fingers. "One night, I stood on the beach contemplating swimming out until I couldn't swim anymore. And that's when she appeared. Mummy Water," Adana whispered. She rose from the waves like a vision from the old stories. Half woman, half fish, completely magnificent. She asked me why I wanted to die, and I told her everything. My failures, my debts, my shame. Chief Obi drank deeply. And she made me an offer. She would give me wealth beyond measure, success in every venture, status, and respect. She would even give me something I'd never thought possible, a daughter. A child to carry on my name. What did she want in return? But Adana already knew. The contract had been explicit. 20 years. She wanted 20 years to watch you grow, to know her daughter lived among humans, learned their ways, experienced their world. But on your 20th birthday. He couldn't finish. "I have to go to her. I have to leave everything and everyone I've ever known and live in the ocean forever." Adana's voice was surprisingly steady despite the terror coursing through her veins. "You sold me before I was even born. I thought I had time. I thought perhaps as the years passed, I could find a way to break the pact, to protect you. You thought wrong." The voice came not from either of them, but from the window. They both turned to see water flowing into the room, not pouring or flooding, but moving with deliberate purpose, forming itself into a column that shimmered and shifted until it took the shape of a woman. Not fully solid, not fully liquid, but something in between. Mummy Water had come herself. She was even more beautiful up close, and Adana felt something stir in her blood at the sight of her, something that felt like recognition, like coming home after a long absence. "Hello, daughter," Mummy Water said, her voice like waves caressing the shore. "It's time." "No." Chief Obi stepped between them. "Please, I'll give you anything else, all my wealth, my life, anything but her." Mummy Water's expression softened with something that might have been pity. "The pact was clear, Obi. And time has run out. I won't go." Adana's voice rang through the compound with a defiance that surprised even herself. "I don't care what pact was made. I didn't agree to it. This is my life, and I choose to stay here." Mummy Water's beautiful face hardened. "You would deny your true nature? Deny your heritage? My heritage is here. These people, this village, this is my home. Then watch what happens when you refuse destiny, child. The water spirit dissolved back into liquid and flowed out of the window. For a moment, Adana thought she'd won. Then she heard the screaming. From the window, she watched in horror as the ocean retreated. Not in natural tides, but in a massive withdrawal that pulled back hundreds of feet from the shore. Fish flopped on suddenly exposed seabed. Boats that had been floating in the harbor now sat stranded on wet sand. And the water kept pulling back until the ocean seemed to disappear entirely beyond the horizon. What's happening? Kyoma burst into the compound, her face pale with fear. The wells, Adana, all the wells in the village are drying up. Chief Obi stumbled to the window, his face ashen. She's taking the water. All of it. By sunrise, the disaster was complete. Every well in Ikoro had run dry. The river that fed their farms had slowed to a trickle. The ocean remained impossibly distant, leaving the fishing fleet stranded and useless. And in the neighboring villages, messengers brought news that the same was happening everywhere along the coast. This is a curse, the village elders declared, gathering in Chief Obi's compound. The spirits are angry. Someone has offended them gravely. Adana watched as her father's face twisted with guilt, but he said nothing. How could he explain that his daughter, the girl they'd all watched grow up, had celebrated and loved, was the cause of their suffering? 3 days passed. Children began to cry from thirst. Crops withered in the fields. The elderly grew weak and sick. Adana spent every moment desperately trying to help, rationing what little water remained, organizing expeditions to distant rivers, doing anything she could to ease the suffering her refusal had caused. On the third night, Emeka found her on the beach, staring at the distant, retreating ocean. "There's talk in the village," he said quietly. "People are saying this started on your birthday. That it's somehow connected to you." They're right. Adana couldn't lie to him anymore. She told him everything, the pact, her mother, the impossible choice she faced. When she finished, Emeka pulled her close. "Then we'll fight her together. We'll find a way to break this curse without losing you." "And if we can't? How many people will die because of my choice?" He had no answer. Neither did she. But that night, in her dreams, Mummy Wata came to her again, not in anger, but with a message that changed everything. "You think you're saving them by staying, but you're killing them slowly." Mummy Wata's voice filled Adana's dream like the rush of deep currents. "Come to me, daughter. Not as a prisoner, but as yourself. There are truths you need to understand." Adana woke with the taste of salt on her lips and a decision crystallizing in her heart. If she went to her mother, if she at least heard what Mummy Wata had to say, perhaps she could negotiate, find a compromise that would save the village without losing herself forever. At midnight, she walked into the ocean. Or rather, she tried to walk into where the ocean should have been. The porter had retreated so far that she had to walk for nearly an hour across exposed seabed, past stranded coral and desperate sea creatures dying in the air, before she finally reached the water's edge. The moment her feet touched the waves, transformation began. It didn't hurt, it felt like coming home. Her legs fused together, bones reshaping, skin giving way to scales that shimmered with the same iridescent colors she'd seen on her mother. Gills opened along her ribs, and suddenly she could breathe underwater as easily as she'd breathed air her entire life. Power flooded through her, the ability to sense every current, every creature, every drop of water for miles around. "Welcome, daughter." Mummy Wata appeared before her, no longer made of water but solid and real. "Welcome to who you truly are." She took Adana's hand and pulled her down into depths that should have crushed her but instead felt like embracing. They descended past coral kingdoms and underwater mountains, past creatures Adana had never imagined existed, until they reached a palace carved from a single massive pearl. Inside, Mummy Wata showed her everything. "Your father thinks I demanded this pact out of cruelty," she said, gesturing to crystal walls that displayed memories like windows into the past. "But the truth is, I fell in love with him. I wanted to give him a child, wanted to experience motherhood even though my nature as a spirit made it impossible to raise a child in the ocean. Adana watched the memories unfold, her mother and father young and happy, genuinely in love, making the pact together as a solution to let their daughter experience both worlds. The plan was always for you to return to me when you were old enough to choose for yourself. To learn your powers, understand your heritage, and then decide where you belonged. Mumiwata's expression grew dark. But I never intended to punish the village. That's not my doing. Then who? Ekwensu. The name came out like a curse. An ancient dark spirit who's been poisoning the connection between land and sea for decades. He wants the world separated permanently, chaos and suffering on both sides. And he's using your refusal as a catalyst to finally sever the bond completely. Adana's blood ran cold. How do we stop him? That's why I really brought you here, daughter. You're the only one who can. Mumiwata trained Adana in the ways of water spirits for what felt like weeks, though time moved strangely in the underwater realm. She learned to control currents, to communicate with sea creatures, to sense the health of every river and stream. Her power grew exponentially, and with it came understanding of just how much danger both worlds faced. Ekwensu had been working for years to separate land and sea completely. The drought was just the beginning. If left unchecked, the coastal lands would become desert, and the ocean would grow toxic and violent, eventually flooding and destroying everything. You are the bridge, Adana, her mother explained. Born of both worlds, belonging to both. Only you have the power to maintain the connection permanently. Finally, Adana was ready to face Ekwensu. She found him in the darkest depths, where even her mother's power couldn't reach, a realm of shadows and ancient evil. He was massive and terrible, a creature of nightmare made manifest. The half-breed comes to challenge me. His laughter was the sound of drowning. You cannot win, child. I've already poisoned too many connections. The worlds will separate whether you fight or not. Then I'll create a new connection. Stronger than before. And how will you do that? Ekwensu's eyes glowed with malicious amusement. Do you know what it takes to permanently bridge two worlds? It requires a sacrifice, a life force constantly maintaining the balance, holding the connection open through sheer will and power. Adana's heart sank as she understood. You mean? You would have to give up everything. Your human life, your spirit life, all of it. Bind yourself to the boundary between worlds, neither fully alive nor fully dead, forever alone while both worlds continue without you. Ekwensu smiled cruelly. Your father would watch you fade into legend. Your lover would move on. Your mother would lose you just as completely as if you'd never been born. And you would exist in eternal limbo, maintaining balance but never again experiencing either world you're trying to save. Adana swam to the surface, her heart shattering. Through the water's surface, she could see Ikoro. Her father stood on the beach where the ocean used to reach, scanning the waves every day. Emeka had carved a statue of her that he visited each morning, refusing to believe she was gone. Kayama had organized prayer circles, lighting candles and begging the spirits for her return. And beneath the waves, she felt her mother's grief, the underwater kingdom that had welcomed her with such joy now preparing to lose her forever. Both worlds needed her. Both worlds loved her. But she couldn't belong to both, not and remain herself. The choice would destroy her. But refusing to choose would destroy everything. Adana closed her eyes, feeling the pull of land and sea warring in her blood, and made her decision. What would you choose, your own happiness or saving everyone you love? Leave your answer in the comments below.